One of the fundamental issues that we have, and this is really, really fundamental to our ability to scale, we're going to decarbonize and electrify. We need to increase everything dramatically. We're just so much too small across the board. We're on an express train to zero carbon, and we got to get moving. So just to understand the problem with this average approach that we've been taking, when we deem results in advance, when we say, what is the average impact of a heat pump or the average impact of an HVAC system or a smart thermostat, there's a challenge there because in many cases that average, we're selling to early adopters and laggards at the same time, and that average is not that cost effective to the customer or the grid. The customers, on average, you see pretty low impacts to bills, and on average, in many cases, we're not cost effective. Because we deem these results in advance, the incentive for everybody in the market is to get as many customers as possible, not to optimize around best outcomes. In California in particular, but really in many states across the country now, we have this opportunity in the form of what's called normalized metered energy consumption, at least in the California market, to say, actually, we want to move from deemed averages in advance and instead focus on results at the meter that actually occur that we can measure. These revenue grade calculations of energy savings, but more importantly, time and locational values. And the advantage of targeting highest potential is that you get customers that have drastically more benefits, potentially 2 or 3 times more bill and reduction benefits, and something looking similar and sometimes even greater on the GHG and grid impacts. Because when we say targeting and identifying high potential, we're looking for those customers that actually have an HVAC problem. They'll see personal benefits, but the grid benefits will go through the roof. And so from a scale standpoint, as we're launching a product, we got to find the early adopters that actually want our product. And when we do that, we get these remarkably better outcomes at lower prices. This is real data collected from the home performance program that SMUD's been running. So this is residential. This is not heat pumps. This is, well, some of these are heat pumps actually, but this is HVAC and Shell primarily. And so the program, and this looks very similar to other programs across the board, is saving about 1,000 kilowatt hours, just under, per customer, with about 9% savings. On the left, this red line represents when those savings occurred on the electric side during the summer months, right? So you can see what's interesting is these peaks in residential tend to be very coincidental with the duck. So we're saving the most in the summer during that ramp period, which makes it pretty darn valuable. 15% kWh reductions during those peak hours. In terms of finding high potential, this is where the opportunity is, right? So if we look at that and we realize actually what we've been doing is just trying to sell HVAC because that's how everybody's rewarded. But if instead we step back and say, who are the customers that actually benefit the most? And we identify and target them. And in this case, we're looking for the customers that are using, this is the 25% essentially of customers using the most air conditioning during that ramp window, the system peak, which is when it's most valuable to SMUD on an avoided cost basis, and that's where most of the GHGs are. We can double those customer savings. So in this subset of those customers, they're seeing 2x the average. They're seeing 3x the savings during the peak and getting much deeper savings at the same time. These are customers that we're solving real problems for, cash flow, and are much more valuable to the grid. So we can afford to incentivize them at a higher rate and drive more demand. And then on an avoided cost basis, this is the average program itself. They're saving for the life cycle of a customer, $2,300 in avoided cost value across GHGs, capacity, T&D, energy, losses, et cetera. So this is what these customers are actually worth across their useful life to SMUD on average. And again, that top quarter of the customer base, which is a huge segment of the population, who we know, and we know who these people are in advance, have a much bigger impact, right? So those customers are worth double the average customer. So not only are these customers seeing markedly better results on their meter, they're happier, they're more likely to say yes, but we can actually afford to incentivize them at a higher rate, which is what we need to drive early demand and still come out ahead on the cost effectiveness basis. So, we can either spend more money and get better results, or we can take current budgets and optimize them and get much better outcomes for the same budget when it comes to the grid and GHG reductions. It's also useful across categories. This is, again, a commercial program, same type of trend. We have the baseline on the left, so this is how these commercial customers used energy, and on the right, we have what we call resource curves. So this is how they saved energy. Left is usage, right is savings from the intervention in this program, the CES program. When we target the 40% of customers, right, that have the load shape usage, where they're actually the ones using energy during that peak window that we care the most about, because that's where the GHGs are, the avoided costs, we're getting a lot more savings in that peak window. these customers not only are saving more themselves, but they're worth a lot more. We're doubling those peak savings, which means we're seeing markedly higher GHG reductions at the same time. Using this type of an approach is just critical to all of our efforts. We have to actually identify where heat pumps will make the most sense, where is insulation going to work the best, who's the best candidate for a smart thermostat, and really think about identifying those customers. And the way to think about this is there's no equity in convincing a customer to retrofit a building and have their bills go up after. But if we're going to use ratepayer money to try to decarbonize, we need to use it as wisely as possible to achieve the best possible results. And when we do that, we get programs that are much more cost effective, which means we can invest more in them, get better outcomes, and we can scale.